Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, and I'm joined right now by Dr. Stan Blade. He's the Dean of the University of Alberta, Faculty of Agricultural Life Environmental Sciences. Stan, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. Great to speak to you, Sean.
Yeah, it's great to chat. Great commentary piece that I saw in the Hill Times, Stan, and entitled 5 Key Issues Facing Canada's Agri-Food Industry. And of course, right now with COVID-19, it seems we're focused much more on the issues than the opportunities, but we're going to come out on the other side of this. Now, what's interesting is your opening piece. It says, recent events show there's no entitlement to the continued prosperity of our agri-food value chain. I found it very interesting to use the word entitlement. Why that word?
You know, I guess we've all been looking at where we are currently, and obviously, yes, I agree with you. Let's sort of take COVID out of the mix, although we're all obviously responding with every inch of our being to try to make it work within this constraint. The entitlement piece, you know, I started to think about 2 or 3 years ago when global trade was working. Canada had these unbelievable stats for exports. And then, of course, you know, China happens, India happens, Italy on the Durham front. And you start to think about other places in the world where there have been agricultural powers, or there's been a lot of great things happening in the industry. But there's no guarantee, right? When I travel through Southeast Asia, I worked for many years in Africa, and things like cocoa, you know, this was West Africa's story. It was the reason why a lot of people came to West Africa looking for agricultural development in those early days. Now you go to a place like Vietnam, they have this huge cocoa industry that really is putting pressure on those traditional areas of West Africa. I'm kind of thinking the same way in Canada. There's just no guarantee that, yes, we've got great water, great people, great land. But, you know, the world isn't waiting for Canada, and we have to make some conscious decisions, some thoughtful decisions about how we're going to position our industry for the future. Well,
you listed some agricultural cliches, and I thought it was, as I read each one, I was like, yeah. So
I listed 20, but I needed to narrow it down. There are so many.
Well, you have one of my favorites. We need to feed 9 billion people by 2050. We use that one for a good 3 to 5 years. Food security isn't a production issue. It's a distribution problem. We need to invest in the industries of the future, not the past. Amazing industry, but I hope my kid doesn't choose that as a career option. Those are, we can all identify with those. We've used them.
And, you know, obviously, as a dean, that last one, particularly painful. And I spend a lot of my time interacting with people, not only in the agri-food sector that have kids that are coming through junior high and high school, but others in urban environments that don't have that background. It's the reason why we do special things to make sure that kids that come from an urban setting actually feel more comfortable in an ag or a food program, those sorts of things. We just need to think differently about who we are and where we're going.
So the 5 issues that you have put down that are facing our agri-food sector, the first one, in no particular order, I'm assuming, food security. Talk about that.
Well, now I really do have to invoke COVID. I mean, Canadians just never think about this, right? I mean, we've got people sitting on the 14th floor of condos in Toronto talking about food supply chains. This was not even in anybody's, aura, atmosphere up until now, when people are actually going to their own local grocery store and seeing empty shelves of food products. It strikes a little bit of of fear, I'm sure, into certain people. We do a lot of work up in the Yukon. We have a joint degree with Yukon University. Whenever we talk about food security up there, they will always tell the stories. I think it was 2011 where the highway was cut and all of a sudden food supplies were not coming into Whitehorse. We're experiencing this across Canada, across the world. And I think it gives us maybe just a unique window to start showing people all the amazing things that happen within our supply chain. Lots of things to improve for sure, but we need to think about what food security means here in Canada. And let's face it, some communities have dealt with this for years. Indigenous populations, again, the work that we do in the North, people are thinking about food security. Not new for all groups, but I think for a lot of us, this is the first time we're really thinking about our food supply right here in Canada.
Well, I'm right there with you. I've been saying that this is maybe the opportunity as people go to the grocery store and see that there's no meat on the shelf or there's no milk in the fridge, why that is the case, and just maybe that the food system actually happens. There's a couple steps before the grocery store. Yeah. The milk doesn't just get manufactured in the store, but you know what? There is going to be some communication challenges there too, Stan, and that's for example, this week milk dumping. Why is that happening?
Yes. No one wants to see that, right? It just sends all the intuitively people they realize that there's something wrong about that.
Yeah. Okay, new players. This is an interesting one.
Well, certainly our faculty is thinking a lot about how we get engaged in everything around digital agriculture. We've hired a number of interesting professors sort of in the cropping systems side of things, into the relationships between plants, microbes, soil. There's lots of data there that we can use differently. And we've been thinking a lot about really a digital agriculture chair. And I had the good luck to talk to a lot of the key companies that are thinking about this. The very fact that you've got groups like Airbus and IBM Watson and all the sort of the players that you wouldn't think about. Last year I was invited out to Microsoft because they were working on farm beats and wanted some input from people about where they were going. We need those groups. I think agriculture has always leaned on some pretty traditional areas, and I'll include ourselves in one of those, universities, colleges, Ag Canada, to develop those technologies. We need that influx, certainly of technology, but of capital as well. I was really pleased to see the Arlene Dickinson story yesterday about her $100 million fund that she's pulled together for food and health. I mean, those are good signals. We need different sources of capital, and we certainly need different technology providers outside of maybe the usual suspects that we always think about.
And we may be uncomfortable with some of those new ways that companies like Microsoft and Google, the way they approach our industry, because we can, let's be honest, we're like everybody else. We get locked into that doesn't work in ag.
Of course. And I've been saying that myself. I mean, when I've talked to some of these companies, some that I haven't named, that I wouldn't name, I see that they have an application maybe for the health sector or others, and it looks like they're just trying to pick it up and move it into the agri-food supply chain. I'm not sure that's going to be successful, but the very fact that these people see that there's a prize to be involved, and yes, of course, I think it's reasonable to worry, are they in for the long haul? Or 30 years to be seen, but I think we're better to have them inside the tent than outside the tent ignoring us.
Okay, Stan, daunting challenges, and under this one, it's basically stuff that is completely out of our control.
Correct. Listen, we already have all of those issues, whether it is invasive pests or all of the things that agriculture has traditionally faced. The trade stuff, clearly we have to have a different view of the world. I know that I think you're going to be interviewing Senator Doug Black this week. He's talking about how do we become more, I don't know about self-sufficient, but just more protective of Canada's role in rather than just counting on our international trading partners. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. Canada needs to be an international trader. I'm hoping that some of the tone across the world will be thinking differently, but we have to be ready for this. I guess it's back to the entitlement word. Yeah. There's no guarantee that everybody's going to take all of our wheat and all of our canola, and we just have to worry about production costs and increasing productivity, and everything will be great. The world is just more complicated than that. I would quickly say, though, that, and I realize people that are in the middle of this don't want to hear it, but those problems are the kinds of things that attract new players, new ideas into our sector. And I think that might give us a real ramp for where we're going next.
Yeah, very good point. Recruiting new people. We have heard so much about this over the last few years. And of course, COVID has put a lot of stress on a short-term basis on having enough people to work in our industry. But recruiting people into the industry, it has been a challenge.
It has been, I alluded earlier in this discussion to the way that we think about recruiting people. We have more people coming into our ag and food programs from urban environments than we do from rural environments. That's quite a shift from even up to about 5 years ago. That's exciting because people see the opportunities. We're trying hard to get people to understand the cool things that are going on in ag and food. My usual story is that even here at the University of Alberta, we have more transfers from other faculties into our faculty after the first year. And I think it is because they take a food production course, they take one of our other ag economics course or others, and all of a sudden they see a pathway, they see all kinds of cool things going on. But we have to work a little harder. And listen, I'm a farm kid. I grew up on a dairy farm in Millet. I like it when I see students come in, or I see graduate students and they hop on a tractor at the research farm and they know, they're just totally dialed in. They're good at everything. They've had a lot of experience. I don't think we should punish students that just haven't had that experience. Yeah. They've grown up somewhere in a town or a city. Yes, they probably can't back a manure spreader into a shed somewhere, but that shouldn't somehow disqualify them from being great participants in our industry. So I'm with you. We have to think differently about that as well.
We've tapped out the farm kid supply. Stan.
That's it. And so what do? We do things like mini internships on our reading weeks. We have kids sign up. It started just on farms with great producers, but now we're putting them into the food sector and everywhere else, just to let them get some sense of what they're learning in the classroom, how it actually translates into large-scale commercial operations. And we just had an unbelievable amount of success. We can't keep up with the number of students that want to participate.
Good to hear. And lastly, I know it's one that's probably closest to your heart, and that is research and innovation are investments.
Yeah, these are interesting days. In the article, I allude to the fact USDA is great. They invite me on occasion. They have a USDA outlook, and the Secretary of Agriculture is there. This was pre-COVID times in January, and Secretary Perdue announced this ag innovation agenda, really to focus the billions of dollars within USDA all towards one point on the horizon: increase productivity by 40% and decrease ag footprint by half by 2050. We've had the Barton report I also refer to. I think that's a great positioning point for Canada. But just go around the world: Australia, New Zealand, the UK, places like Scotland. They are doubling down on investing in agriculture. And, Canada, I'm not sure that we really have a grasp of that. We really do need to think about this as an investment. I'm pleased Minister Dreeshen announced last week the results-driven agriculture research group, $37 million a year. I think that's an important step. I'm pleased to be on that interim board, but we really have to think about this even more. What are we going to invest, and what is the target that we're trying to reach? And let's just pick a number. If it's the Barton number of $85 billion in exports, let's start making decisions that we can actually reach that target.
We can't just say we're going to have $85 billion and then just hope it happens. There has to be a systematic process to it. You have to set yourself up to enable the opportunity to actually happen. What's interesting, you mentioned USDA. On some U.S. farm shows that I've appeared on, they when they talk about research, they look at China and say, "Man, China is killing us in terms of research."
When I see, and we have close relationships with a number of the great ag universities in China, and it's very clear when we collaborate with them on genomics, they are our peers. When we collaborate with them on plant science, they are our peers. We do a lot of work with their key university that is involved in biodiversity, ag biodiversity. They are our peers. No doubt there is a huge amount of technology that's available in other places, but we just have to think about this differently. I think up until now, we thought we've got this great land base, we've got great people, we have reasonable investments, and let's face it, there were some fantastic years as the world was keen to get Canadian agri-food products. But again, that is no guarantee it's like the mutual fund small print, right? That is no guarantee of future performance.
Yeah, we got to make sure 10 years from now, when you do another version of this article, one of the cliches is not like, why wouldn't people want to deal with us?
Exactly right. So, I am an optimist for sure. I think that there are lots of things that we're doing right. I think that even post-COVID, It's going to give us an opportunity maybe to position ourselves with federal politicians for sure, certainly with provincial politicians. And we start building again from there to say, let's train the people. Let's think about these new ways of investing in innovation. Let's bring in those new partners. And let's just address those hurdles where we think we don't have any levers by doing the things that we can do on our own.
We've been talking to Dr. Stan Blade from the University of Alberta. Stan, thanks a lot. Appreciate you joining us here today.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you, Sean.